and thank you very much, everyone, for joining me. This is going to be a short little lesson. It's designed to help system administrators and support colleagues working with Sage CRM, who in turn need to support partners and customers as they configure and use territory management. And so we're going to be focused very much on the support aspects of this feature rather than thinking about the use of the feature as such. Now, the training session is going to cover the key information you need to know to investigate the product, and it will also direct you to the main sources of reference that you can use. That main source of information is going to be the Help Center, so that's help.sagecrm.com. This is the key site for getting any information that you need to help troubleshoot the issue or an issue that may come up. And it's here that you'll find things like the System Administration Guide for all of the different supported versions of Sage CRM. And it's something that we should be encouraging our partners and our customers to use as much as possible. We also need to encourage our customers and partners to use the Sage Customer Support and Training YouTube site, as this has videos that explain how to use the different features of Sage CRM. And here you can see that I've highlighted a couple of all around about the idea of updating the territories and the creation and editing of territories. So there's lots of resources that are available to us. In fact, the short videos on the YouTube channel are designed to help the system administrator to cover all of the knowledge that they need. So creation of a security profile, the creation and editing of security territories in Sage CRM, and the editing of security policies as well. And there are lots of other topics related to territory management on the YouTube channel as well. So Sage CRM has a powerful security mechanism implemented as an automatic alteration of the SQL that is used to fetch either the application data to the screen or the metadata that controls the availability of features. And so a user is going to be able to access a particular set of data records to which another user may not have access. And the user may also be able to use features such as delete and change buttons when looking at a record, but the second user may only have view rights with no access to the buttons in the interface. Now, in terms of the setup and creation of territories, this is actually very well discussed in the System Administration Guide. But here you can see this is the default territory structure. And the default territory structure that is shipped with Sage CRM, as an example in the example data, is a mixed or hybrid structure that is based on geography and business function. You can see that there's the idea of a root worldwide territory. With underneath that, you've got the US and Canada, and then you've also got at the same level Europe, and within the US and Canada there's US East and US Central, etc. And within the European branch of the hierarchy, you've got Ireland, UK and Holland. And the marketing function, which is the functional rather than the geographical part of the hybrid structure, has its own territory structure as well. And here, if we look at this screen, we can see that this is showing the different default users, the example users within the system. And if I just focus in on John Finch here, you can see that John Finch is in the US East territory. Now, that idea of marking a user as belonging to a territory is coupled with the fact that data is also marked as belonging to a territory. And this has the effect of limiting John Finch's access to data within the system. And so the exact way in which this is limited is decided by something called the security profile, but the core feature of the territory approach is to limit John Finch to only being able to see the data that was marked as in the US East territory or lower. Compare that with this screen, and here you can see that this is showing the search results for Susan May, She's in the territory US and Canada, and she can see all of the data below her. You can see here I'm doing a find company, and there are 434 companies that she can see. But if you go back to John Finch, looking at the same type of information, you can see here that because he can only see the US East territory information, he can see there a 212 records. But if I look at another user, somebody who's in the US West territory, Brian Little, then Brian Little can see 105 companies. But that's the only data. Now this is the data that is being marked in his territory, and that's a different set of data from the information that that John Finch saw. So the data that a user like John Finch or Brian Little sees is a product of an SQL statement, an SQL query that fetches the data. But that query, that is a select statement, is dynamically changed using the territory information to restrict the return of data. And like any features really within the user interface with inside Sage CRM that is interacting with the database, you know that there's going to be a view sitting underneath there. So any interaction with the Sage CRM database is a result of a view being used. And that view must take into account the data that is going to be restricted by the concept of territories in some way. And so if we're looking at a company entity, you can probably start to reason, well, a company is not just company information, a company is person information as well. And here, if we look at the view that sits underneath the search screen, here you can see that I'm looking at a view called, this is the definition of a view called the search list company. You see I've come into administration, customization, company, and come down into looking at the views and then into the existing system view, the search list company. This is showing at the top of the definition screens that it explains that views must include reference to certain fields in order to ensure that the views will work with the security system. You notice that there the idea is that it's saying you must retrieve certain fields, sector, created by, channel ID, and so on. Now these fields, these are the required columns in views. Now the security in Sage CRM is able to be defined around policies that allow a user access to a record if the record matches their territory, and that's going to be in the field sector. So case sector, com sector, comp sector, lead sector, oppo sector, and PERS sector in the examples that we see on screen. But there's also more than that within the concept of the overall security policies, because we might have a rule that says a user who originally created the record should be able to see it, or if they have been assigned the record or it's in their team, they should be able to see it. And within the concept of what's called the security profile, these security policies are cumulative. In order to see a record that is returned by a view, then a user is going to have rights on all of the tables referenced in that view before they can access the record. So they have to, the person, the company has to be in a territory that the user can see in order to retrieve the company information. So if and you can extend that to the idea to an opportunity for a company and a person, then a user must have rights on the opportunity, the company, and the person involved in that record. So how does this all get stored inside the metadata? And we need to understand this from a support perspective. The details of the security territories that might be added into the system are held in a table called territories within inside the CRM database. You can see the example query that I've used here to retrieve this. Notice that each of the territories has a name. It also, importantly, has a territory ID. And this is a reference to, and there's also a reference to a parental territory. Remember, the territory structure is a hierarchy. Only the worldwide or the root territory breaks the pattern, and this has 0 value as its parent, and that there's a range end and start values. And you'll notice that all of the ranges and the territory IDs are expressed in this negative. This is a negative integer. And what we're seeing is that we are expressing a numeric range that is gradually feeding up to 0. So 0 is at the top, and everything digs down, 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 down in this numeric range. What you've got within the hierarchy is an ability to express the different branches of the territory management by allocating numeric numbers which express a set of a range of numbers in which records could be slotted. However, whatever we include here is that any record is always going to be assigned to a particular integer that has to appear within these territory IDs. So no record marked inside CRM should ever have a number that does not correspond to one of these territory IDs. Strictly speaking, the tables that are covered by security are only the primary entities, and you can get a list of these by retrieving from the custom tables table and looking for where the board_primary table field is not null. In a vanilla system, that would be cases, communication, company, opportunity, person, lead, library, account, orders and quotes. Account is an entity that is typically not surfaced. It's only used in certain integrated systems. Library was promoted to being a primary entity governed by security in Sage CRM 2019 R2. So you won't see library as a primary entity in versions earlier than 2019 R2. And here you can also see that project, which is one of my custom entities within my system, custom entities can also be included within this as well. This is why any of the tables that are shown here, this is why they're surfaced then inside, as you can see, the interface, where you've got the screenshot showing the security profile administration screen. So the primary entities are covered by security are listed here. Each entity in CRM that is covered by security system also, well, it has a column in the table that is named sector. So it has the suffix sector. In the company table, this would be comp sector. In the case table, this would be case sector, and so on. This particular statement that I've used inside the management console has allowed me to find out which tables have a security territory field using this SQL statement. Now, I showed you this slide before. So this is reminding us that the Sage CRM security policy that builds the complete rules that are used to dynamically change the SQL, that it is to restrict the data that any one user may see. So we have to think, we can't just think of sector field in isolation, because in terms of the way in which the user interface works, we're pulling data from CRM through a view. Nearly every user sits inside a security structure, and the users, not just based on the security territory, but also within the context of their security profile, and that's where all these different policies are used. So the security policy can involve not just referencing the security territory information, but also may reference which user created the record, the team that is associated with the user, and the user that has been assigned to the record. And these columns differ in name from table to table. And we've got this odd situation for historic reason. The team information is always called table suffix, so whatever underscore channel ID, XXX underscore channel ID. Now, if we want to see the user profile in action, a dynamic change, we need to go into the logs. So remember, we've been looking at the idea of a user calling up and searching information into the searching the company. So the logs provide a very useful place to view the way in which the SQL is changed dynamically by Sage CRM. Now think back to that company search screen and think back to when I was using the user John Finch. So we're looking at demo data. If I pull this back, if I pull the information back without using any filters, the following SQL is generated into the logs. We can see that we've got some dynamically changed SQL. And let's see what this is. So this select statement, this is doing the majority of the pulling back of the records that match the criteria. But do you notice how it's not just saying select star from the search list company? We've got here a where clause that is changed and is making reference to these different security elements. So we've got comp sector being referenced here. Notice that it's looking for the idea that the record may actually be null, so it's not being put into a territory, or whether territory or the comp sector is greater than, and then it's got a value in here. So here what you've got is this concept of the range being used, the idea that you're inside a negative range, you're inside a range of numbers, so you've got to specify things that are within his allowance as being a US East Coast salesperson. And you've got also the rules that whether it is created by him or it's been assigned to him, or in fact it might well be, in this case, because it's a person, he's not mentioning the channel ID. But every table that is mentioned in the underlying view is going to have the security associated with it. So it's not just a comp table, it's also the person table. Company and person is applied. Both entities are covered by security, and so both have to have the SQL automatically expanded by SQL to include checks on the appropriate columns. Remember, those were comp sector, comp channel ID, the comp primary user ID, the comp created by, comp PERS sector, PERS primary user ID, and PERS created by. Now, because we know these columns are going to be referenced automatically in CRM, that's why, from a support perspective, we need to understand that any views that are created by a system administrator or a user must include those columns in the select statement. We can remind ourselves by looking at the default territories within the demo data. The Sage CRM security territory hierarchy can be expanded either horizontally or vertically. Horizontal expansion is where we choose to add more territories under the same parent at the same level. So, for example, within the default demo data territories, if we added 3 new territories, France, Germany, and Italy, to the Europe territory, we would have expanded horizontally. Vertical expansion is where we add territories one under another. And so that's the depth of the territory expansion rather than its width. So if we go deep, that's the vertical expansion. If we go wide, then that's the horizontal expansion. And so here, if I've changed the territory structures, the standard capacity, and you're wondering sort of how much can you go to if you're adding more and more into the interface, what can you do here? Well, the standard capacity for a territory structure is actually 16 child territories on each territory, with 5 territory levels deep. So you could go 16 wide, 5 deep by default. And that would then reach your capacity. I'm nowhere near that capacity at the moment. But if I'd attempted to add a new territory, it would trigger a prompt stating that the territory structure needed to be something called rebalanced. Now remember, these are expressed in terms of negative ranges, and so we're trying to slot in a new range out of the existing ranges. And you could see that there'd be a sense of congestion, a sense that maybe you're not going to be able to do this. And this is why you get this message saying the territory structure needs to be rebalanced. Please perform a territory rebalance as soon as possible. And this is where we will take the existing territories. And so this is the different territory ranges. So range end, range start, the parental territory. And rebalancing allows us to, if we go through the process of rebalancing, change these. This is where we've added in the new territory, so it starts to get congested. So rebalancing needs to be applied in order to respace the ranges, to allow new territories to be added. So this is where we're getting a little bit more congested. We've got France, Germany, and Italy being added in here. If I go through the process of rebalancing, it's actually a very simple process, but it can actually take a little bit of time. So to rebalance the territory tree structure, you'd have to go into, as you can see here, into administration, users, security, selecting rebalance from the page. Now, this is something that can't be undone, so you should make sure that there are no users logged in, and you should back up as well. So you back up before doing anything like this. Because anytime you're running a batch SQL, set of batch SQL statements against the database, must always make sure that the customer or partner has backed up. But once we continue, the message is going to be displayed when the rebalancing statement finishes. And then get a continue button to be able to do that. So I've got no users in the system. I backed up, of course I backed up my system, and this is what you get at the end of it. So this is a rebalance system where the number ranges have changed. Now, it's not an infinite number that is allowed to be added into the security structure, but by rebalancing it does allow you to increase the overall capacity quite substantially. The new physical limit depends on the shape of the security hierarchy. Remember, I talked about the idea of horizontal growth and vertical growth. The new limit is going to be dependent on this width or depth being fed into the algorithm that allocates the territory ranges. Okay, well, I've covered just about what I needed to cover in this short video. So let's end by thinking about some general tips about security territories. Make sure that you check the logs to see how the SQL is being built, if there's a problem that you suspect is to do with security. Make sure you back up anything before you make any changes, so you have a proper recovery point to where you go to. Check sector fields for nulls. Check values for not matching security values in the territory table. Make sure that you've got the correct field references in views. Make sure that that includes as well whether you get this very often in reporting where people have built reports but they haven't given their users sufficient rights over each of the territories. And check those definitions of security profiles as well. Okay, Those are my tips. I hope that this little lesson has been useful.